Dan Slone. This is Dan's Tiki Bar. Welcome to another episode of Bits and Pieces. First, I should open with an explanation of technology again. I was planning on moving back to the camera for this one. In fact, I did. I recorded 3 more stories, and one of them, the audio didn't come through at all. And the other 2, as you'll hear, the audio is really pretty bad. The first one I'm remaking, so this is a remake of it. The other 2, I've cleaned the audio up as best I can. I apologize for the audio on those. We'll have it right soon. But this is a continuation of the exploration of technologies. I'm using a Pivo today with my iPhone, so theoretically it follows me around as I move around behind the bar here. So we'll see. I don't know what the sound quality is going to be on this. The technical one was pretty good, but I was holding that a little closer. So we'll see. I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to talk to you about buying the farm. So this episode was called Bought the Farm, and you'll see why when you hear the following episodes. But this is around 1984. My wife and I had been renting a house and decided we wanted to buy our first house. We were about a year out of school, and we didn't have much money. We were looking for an older house, maybe a house on 5 acres. We decided we wanted to try out living on 5 acres. No real clear reason why. We'd both grown up in the suburbs. We certainly weren't urban, but we weren't rural either. But we decided a house on 5 acres. So we went looking, we talked to brokers, and this one broker said, I have just what you're looking for. It's a little further out from the city, but we think it'll be what you're looking for. And so they took us out to this house. The house was a classic Virginia farmhouse, white asphalt shingles with a green roof, just a kind of 2-story box. And the house was built about 100 years ago, and I don't think it was built that well when it was built. You know how you hear people talk about how, oh, my house is 200 years old, and it means that it was built great, and that's why it survived this long. This house was kind of sagging at the top. You could see where they'd shored the roof up when you went up in the attic, and they'd added on to it a couple of times. It was actually much smaller when it had first been built, and it was okay, but I know it wasn't the house that my wife was looking for. The farmer had 43.5 acres, but they'd had a lot of trouble selling it. The bank really wouldn't give you financing for more than 5 acres. And so they had divided it up. So they were selling the house in 5 acres, and then they were going to sell the remaining 38 acres separately. We came and looked at it, and my wife was instantly not in love with the house. But I was instantly in love with the land. Unfortunately, it was the 38 acres, not the 5 acres that went with the house. We walked around on this land, and in the first place, you should understand, I just thought it was amazing that you could own a tree. I know that sounds really stupid, but trees are often so old, and it's just amazing to me that you can be responsible for and own a tree. But this property, when you walked on it, we were walking along, a skunk came out of the woods, and the farmer told us there were foxes and possums and raccoons and deer, lots of black snakes. That's a story for another day. But I fell in love with the place. And so afterwards, when my wife and I were talking about it, she said, well, of course we wouldn't buy this place. And I began trying to pitch it. And my wife, who is the most wonderful person you can imagine, ultimately agreed to my pitch. The only thing she asked was she'd always wanted a yellow house. And this house was painted white and green. And we were such newbies, we didn't really even understand that that's what country houses were. They were white with green roofs. But she wanted a yellow house, and I said, of course. So I wrote this contract. This contract, you need to understand, was a hideous thing. It was way too long, and the poor farmer who got it was, so eager to sell. I don't think he read anything in this contract except how much we were paying and when we'd close. And he agreed to sell. We signed all the contracts. We came over a week or so after we put the contract in place. We were coming by and walking on the land and sort of getting to know it and dreaming about. There was a neat house site in the side of a hill overlooking a stream, and we thought, well, maybe we'll build a house there at some point. In fact, Martha would probably say I promised to build a house there, which is part of the way I got her to agree to this old house. But we were there at the house, and the farmer, Jim, said something about having the house painted soon. And I said, well, how are you going to do that? We haven't even talked about a color yet. We haven't picked a shade of yellow. And he said, what are you talking about? You're going to paint it white. That's what you do. This is a white house. It would be very expensive to paint it another color. It probably wouldn't go with a green roof. And the roof is terribly expensive to paint another color. And I said, well, Jim, you signed a contract that said you'd paint it yellow. And he got that sort of farmer obstinate look on his face and said, well, I'm not going to do it. So he and I had walked outside to talk about this and I looked up, and there in the field in front of us was a horse and a pony running around. And I knew that Jim had told me separately that he was going to sell that horse as part of selling the farm. And he told me a little bit of the backstory on the pony. The pony wasn't his. Someone had left it there, and she was supposed to come back and pick it up. But she hadn't yet. And the pony had been abused, and so Jim just took it in, and the horse and the pony liked hanging out together. I knew that as we talked about the farm, Martha had talked about looking forward to horseback riding out in the country. And so the bright idea occurred to me that I could resolve this problem by doing some old-fashioned horse trading. So that's what I did. I said, Jim, I think we could solve this. I know you're trying to sell that horse. If you will go ahead and paint the place white, but in return for dropping the yellow requirement, you'll give us that horse. And he thought about it a moment. He said, sure, that's fine, but you're going to take the pony too, because this lady's going to come around sometime, and I may come back over and move the pony to my new farm, but if you'll take care of it, and the horse likes hanging out with it. And I said, sure, no problem. So we went in all happy, and on the way home I explained to Martha what I'd done, and she was less than thrilled. It turned out that her idea of horseback riding was going to the stable that you paid to go horseback riding and having the horse already saddled, going for a ride on the horse, and then coming back and handing the horse back to the stable folks. That she didn't actually even know how to saddle a horse. And of course I didn't know anything about horses. Nonetheless, we went forward and closed the deal, moved into the house, and took over caring for a horse and a pony. We learned how to kick hay out of the loft and to feed the horses, to feed the horse and the pony, and learned how to basically manage them. And Martha learned to saddle and learned to ride. Now, our experience on the farm is, some of you are too young to have ever seen the show Green Acres, but those of you who ever saw Green Acres, ours was a Green Acres experience. And those of you who don't know, Green Acres was a program about a couple of city folks who end up on a farm, and they're out of place, and they really don't know what they're doing. And we didn't have a clue what we were doing. We had that Green Acres enthusiasm. We were very excited about being there and very excited about learning the life, but we didn't know anything. And we were so fortunate that we'd bought from Jim and his wife, because we called them all the time.